starting
Okay.
out, do anything and you will get better,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You don't have to like overthink it too much. But
Being
for the
able to love yourself and, validate who you are without any form of expression of it. And that's why I feel like that's what true confidence is in my head. Because
It gives us a journey of self-discovery through our art. Yours might be music or film or writing.
Always been my outlook on everything in regards to life. If I see anybody who has anything, my default is if they can have it or if they can do it, so can I.
We get to
Yes.
speak. We get to do a podcast. We get to work out. We get to. It's a privilege that people often complain and take for granted.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Insightful Podcast. Today is episode 38, I believe. I can't even keep track anymore. And today I want to discuss why you need to start cutting out the meaningless things in your life. Before we get started, remember, we gain insight in order to move forward in life. Also, before we get into the topic of conversation, if you've been enjoying the podcast so far, remember to like, subscribe, and comment. And when you comment, let me know any future topics that you want me to discuss in the future. Because once you guys start to give me topic points, I would love to elaborate on them. So please let me know. With all of that out of the way, let's get into this. Why do you do what you do? Ask yourself this. You need to start analyzing why you do what you do on a daily basis, right? Even if it's something productive, you need to ask yourself why you decided to begin doing that in the first place. If you wake up early all the time, ask yourself, why am I waking up early? Why am I waking up this early? If you're someone that watches Netflix for 2 hours a night, you need to ask yourself, why do I feel the need to do this on a daily basis? Right? Because when it comes to you as an individual, and I always speak to people that are on self-improvement. So when I get some comments or whatever of people saying like, oh, what is this guy talking about? This podcast isn't meant for everyone. This podcast is generally targeted to people that are on self-improvement, right? I need to ask yourself, if you want to achieve a great feat in your life, whatever that might be, every single moment, every single minute, every single hour, every single day matters, right? Because as much as people want to say, take your time, it's not that big of a deal if you waste some time throughout the day. Everything in life is a competition, right? I spoke about this before. This podcast within itself, I am currently filming, but I'm competing with thousands of other podcasts because they're also competing for the top spots, to get the most listeners, right? You only have so much time in a day. And if you want to listen to a podcast, I have to make sure it's mine, right? That's how I am able to grow the podcast. That's how I am able to get reoccurring listeners, viewers. And that's how I'm able to make money off this podcast in the future. It's a competition, right? And because of that, I have to make sure that I'm utilizing my time properly to not only improve the podcast, but to be consistent with the podcast, right? And if you're filling up your time all day with stuff that isn't, beneficial towards the goals you want to achieve in your life, then maybe you need to reconsider what you're doing on a daily basis. Because us as people, we constantly want to seek escapes or want to seek pleasures. And I am this person as well. But if I keep allowing myself to indulge in those pleasures, to indulge into that good feeling, whatever that might be, it is taking me off the path that I should be on, right? I am doing all these meaningless things that aren't helping me towards my goals, right? And a lot of it is like understanding why these things are important. There's plenty of people that you see online that say, oh, I work 16, 17 hours a day. And you may say, that sounds like bullshit. Like maybe he's only in the office for 8 hours, but he's still considering his work when he goes home and he's improving himself, when he's in the gym, when he's on certain, interviews or whatever the case may be, when he's making content, when he's reading a book that's going to help him in his new venture that he's in. This is all considered work. And the reason why it's all considered work is because all these things that he's doing when he's not actually working is going to help him improve himself. It's going to help him be more efficient in what he's chasing. It's going to help him achieve his goal even faster, right? And that's why every single thing you do on a daily basis is so significant, because your habits become who you are. And if who you are right now is a bunch of lazy habits, a bunch of feel-good habits, if that's what it is in this current moment, you are going to be someone that is going to become the result of all those pleasurable things, right? It's just like enjoying food. Everyone loves food. I love food, right? But if you enjoy food too much, you might look at your physique in the mirror and not be proud of that, right? Because you overindulged in this pleasure, right? There's plenty of pleasures in the world and you're going to indulge in them. But you have to realize that you can't be overindulging into them, because if you do that constantly and on a daily basis, and that becomes a regular habit, you are going to reap the negative benefits from it, right? So that's why when you look at these bodybuilders and they're eating, the same shit food every single day, the boiled chicken with the rice, the broccoli, but then you see their physique is a manifestation of their daily habits, of their daily diet, of their daily training schedule, right? And that's just beautiful in my opinion, because you see the result of your habits. And if you have a bunch of meaningless habits on your day-to-day life, that's where you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve. And this all goes back to cutting out habits that you know aren't going to help you and at this current moment is a detriment for you. A lot of people on the internet speak about why video games are bad for you. You shouldn't play any video games, all these different types of things. But it's not the video games that is bad for you. It's what you could be doing instead of playing those video games, right? Because a lot of people will say, I know I used to watch Hamza, for example, and a lot of people would say, oh, Hamza, I just play 1 hour of video games at night before I go to sleep. But he would always say, I don't believe that you're only playing 1 hour. And that's the difference, right? If you're working, like I'm saying, you're doing your thing during the day, then you're working on your side hustles, you're doing whatever throughout the day, and all these things are helping improve who you are and is helping you become the man you know you can be. Then at the end of the night, you set a timer for 1 hour, you play some Call of Duty, and then you hop off the game the second you hear that ringer. That's not going to be a big detriment to you. And if you are someone that is able to pick up the console, pick up the game, play for an hour, and then hop off, then that's perfect, right? That's your form of winding down. Plenty of people have, they're watching anime, they're watching Netflix, they're playing video games, they're playing sports. That's their idea of winding down at the end of the night. But you need to ask yourself, is it a detriment to you? Because if you're not being honest with yourself, with what you're doing on a daily basis, then that's where you need to start. Are you actually playing 1 hour of video games a night? Or are you saying you're going to play one, but then it ends up being 3? I don't know about you guys, but during the pandemic, I would work all day, work like a 2 to 11 or whatever. And then I'd come home and I'd play video games till 4 a.m. Right? And I think a lot of us were doing this at this time. But if I was telling myself, oh, I'm going to play for 1 hour when I get home, then I'm going to go to sleep, and then I kept playing 4 or 5 hours a night, and just kept lying to myself, that's where it's a problem. That's where you should consider, applying some practice that could help you minimize the time you're using it, or cut it out completely if it's that addicting to you, right? It's just like scrolling for me. I'm one of those people that if I catch myself scrolling at all, it ends up being too long. And if it ends up being too long, I am wasting so much time in my day where I could be productive, could be working towards my goals. So what I have to do is cut out scrolling entirely. Don't scroll at all. Because I've tried minimizing my scrolling of, 10 to 20, 30 minutes a day, but it ends up being more. So I need to tell myself I need this out of my life, because every single time I introduce it again and I do it just a bit, it's never just a bit, right? And that's where you really need to focus up and see what are these meaningless things in your life that you're constantly doing that isn't leading to any growth. Because as much as we want to say that self-improvement is what we want to do, a lot of the times it isn't. How many times do I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, I just want to sleep. It's 4 a.m. But I have to do those things, because at the end of the day, who wants to do that? It's not the most pleasurable thing to do. Wake up early, go have a hard training session, but that's what needs to be done. So that's what I need to accept, and that comes from that acceptance. You need to accept that, hey, maybe the things you're currently doing isn't going to lead to the person you want to be in the future. And if you can accept that and not, make excuses for yourself or complain about it, that's where you could start changing it, right? So you need to start cutting out those things that I'm saying. It sounds shitty, but if it's something that is actually holding you back from who you want to be, you need to consider cutting them out. Because if you don't, you're just going to be living the same cycle over and over. Let's say you feel ashamed about yourself because you play too much video games, right? If you feel ashamed about yourself because you do that, if you don't find a way to change that, you're just going to keep living in shame every single day, because you would have had a schedule to get certain things done, to be productive, and then you fall back into the game and you end up playing for 3 hours and you miss that schedule. And if that happens to you, you need to reflect on yourself and say, do I want to be constantly living in this cycle of shame? And I don't know about you guys, but I've lived in a cycle of shame, and it is one of the worst things you can go through as a person. If you feel ashamed of yourself, you do not have drive, ambition, motivation, whatever you want to call it, to do anything, because you feel like you don't deserve anything. And when you feel like you don't deserve anything, that's when you constantly seek out the instant gratification instead of the delayed gratification, And you don't need to accept who you are currently, the version of yourself that you don't like. You could grow from this. You could become a better person. So if you could become a better person and you can accept that it's going to take a while to achieve that type of mind frame, or to be that type of person you want to be, if you could accept that it will take a long time, you could start. And all that matters is you starting, because plenty of people don't even start. They have plenty of bad habits that they do on a daily basis, but they never actually start to cut them out of their lives. So even you just accepting that it's a negative thing to you and it's not leading to your growth, if you can accept that, you're already ahead of most people. And you want to feel like your day-to-day life is something that you're excited to wake up for. It's not just filled with filler things, not just filled with wasting time. People talk about, oh, I'm just going to waste time doing this. Bro, why are you wasting time? Like, even if you're playing a video game, you shouldn't look at it as like a waste of time. You should look at it as something maybe you earned, right? If you did grind the whole day and you have 1 hour at the end of the night and you want to play, don't look at it as wasting time. Look at it as something that you earned because, bro, this life was very, very minimal. Like, we don't have much time on this earth to do the things we want, to become the person we want to be. And because of that, we should utilize all our moments. We should be grateful for all the moments we have. And don't need to, listen to this podcast and let's say you play video games, you eat junk food, you go to sleep late, you spend time scrolling, all these different things, and don't feel the need to cut them all out right now. You watch this video, you got some inspiration, you got some motivation. Okay, I'm going to cut out everything. That doesn't work. You need to have a plan. You need to have a plan of how you're slowly going to cut these things out of your life. And once you slowly start to cut these things out of your life, that's when you can begin to grow. Because just getting rid of all of them at one moment is going to be very difficult to keep up with. And that's the problem, is we watch motivational or inspirational videos wanting to have that feeling of inspiration. But the fact of the matter is this self-improvement journey is very difficult and very hard. And it's something you have to constantly be working on. It's something you have to constantly be conscious of on a daily basis. So don't think that, hey, I want to cut out all the meaningless things in my life, so I'm going to start right now and cut out everything, because that doesn't work. And you can say to me, oh, but this person's done it, this person's done it. But you are not that person. I feel like the most practical way of going about breaking bad habits is to slowly start. Cutting back. If you played video games every single day for 3 hours, maybe cut it back to 2. If you used to go to bed at 3 a.m., maybe tonight go to bed 2 a.m., 1 hour earlier, and slowly but surely, progressively go to bed earlier and earlier. And once you get to the point of where you're going to bed at a time that's reasonable, that one habit, that one bad habit is cured. And then you move on to the next one. Don't just cut out every single thing at the same time and expect to see growth, because it's going to be very hard to maintain if you try that. All right, guys, I feel like I covered everything I wanted to cover, but I do want to leave you guys with a quote from Seneca, one of my favorite philosophers, when it comes to time. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements, if it were all well invested. But when it is wasted in heedless luxury and spent on no good activity, we are forced at last by death's final constraint to realize that it was passed away before we knew it was passing. So we are not given a short life, but we make it short. And we are not ill supplied, but wasteful of it. Life is long if you know how to use it. Seneca on the shortness of life. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast and making it this far. Remember, if you're enjoying the podcast, please give us a follow on Spotify. We gain insight in order to move forward in life. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.